John Sarianides. And tonight I have the good fortune to be joined by my partner from Patriots Pulse, John Lyons. John, how are you this evening?
Not bad, John. A little busy for post game last night because I had a baby. Not me physically, my wife did. But
Yeah.
so here
Well,
I
I
am
said you
tonight.
were on assignment. So.
Yeah, that was my assignment. Yes, that was my assignment. So I'll be back though, not just tonight, but for Patriots Pulse post game for the freaking Super Bowl, John. We're gonna be doing a post game show for the Super Bowl. Last year, we were doing a post game show at the end of the season for a game we didn't even want them to win. And now we're going to be doing a post-game show to end the
For the Super
season
Bowl.
at the Super Bowl. It's just like, it's crazy, man.
It really is crazy. And that's the thing, when you stop and think back to the last 2 years and how bad it's been. You mentioned last year in the final game of the season. Think about the last two games of the season, the last 2 years. Last game of 23 was Belichick's last game, Jets. There's that 3-day back and forth with him and Kraft. We weren't sure, does Belichick come back? Does he not come back? Ultimately, they agree to part ways. Gerard Mayo was then hired in January of 24. Fast forward to January of 25. Mayo out after beating Buffalo in the last game of the regular season of 2024. Mike Vrabel in. Fast forward a year later, and the Patriots are back in the Super Bowl. It is crazy to me that a team that we thought, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, a team that we thought was going to maybe win 8, 9, 10 games has now won 17 games, and they're on the precipice of winning a 7th Super Bowl potentially, which, by the way, I love that the national media is not giving them a chance. I love that some people think it's a foregone conclusion Seattle's going to win, because Mike Vrabel, as we've seen this season, he will feed off of that, and he will feed it to his team. But what a remarkable turnaround, and I don't care what their schedule was. In my lifetime, I'm 50 going on 51. I don't ever remember that type of a turnaround in my experience with the NFL.
I think like the only thing I can kind of compare it to is that 2001 team that won the Super Bowl. But I would actually say this is more improbable, John, because that '01 team, like we didn't know how good Brady and Belichick were going to be, but Belichick had won 2 Super Bowls as a defensive coordinator, and he had coached in another one as a D-backs coach with the Patriots. And speaking of that Super Bowl, there was a decent amount of guys on that '01 Patriots team that had played in the Super Bowl in 1996 and that had been to the playoffs in other years, whether it was, guys like Teddy Bruschi and Ty Law and some of those guys. But this team, I mean, this team hasn't even made the playoffs since 2021. And none of the guys, and we talked about this in the offseason, none of the guys from that Super Bowl 53 team are on this team anymore. So I think this turnaround, honestly, John, I think it's more improbable than that '01 team. Now, if you want to split hairs, I think that '01 team is probably better than this team, whatever. But point is, both like that's the only one I can compare it to. And I think this one is even more improbable, given, again, there were a lot of guys on that '01 team that had played in the Super Bowl against the Packers. Their head coach had at least coached in Super Bowls. I mean, Milton Williams played in the Super Bowl last year, but it was for Philly. I mean, that's all we're really talking about here. This team just really came from no success, this group, to now the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and we just jumped right into it. So, and again, I'll get to doing my read here in a sec, but I agree with you. I mean, again, it's improbable in the sense that we thought that they would be better based on the schedule, the moves they made. We thought they would be better, but again, I can't stress this enough. I don't think anyone saw this. There are people that will tell you, I thought they could win 13, 14 games. That's fine. But realistically speaking, if you looked at it objectively, did you really think, even with the upgrade in coaching, even with the free agent additions, even with a strong draft class, did you really think that this team would win 17 of 20 games and be playing for a Super Bowl? I don't think either one of these teams. I would say the same thing for Seattle. Remember, Seattle didn't even make the playoffs last year.
Yeah, and they fired their OC right after last year, too. Yeah, it changed quarterbacks. Yeah.
So it speaks to why the NFL is great and why the NFL, more than any other of the 4 pro sports leagues in North America, is the one league that you can turn it around pretty quickly. We saw with the Commanders in 24. Yeah. We saw with the Patriots this year, and I hate saying this because I can't stand them, but perhaps the New York Giants could be that team next year. Like, it is a league of quick turnarounds. So we'll see. Again, you're watching the New England Football Show. I'm your host, John Sarianides. I have the good fortune to be joined by my Patriots Pulse partner, WEEI's John Lyons, also a brand new dad. Again, congratulations, John, on the birth of your daughter. That is awesome, awesome news. Welcome to the club, the Parenthood Club, the Girl Dad Club. It's all awesome. I do want to remind you that we are brought to you by Mortgage Right. If you are in the market to sell your current home, purchase your next home, purchase your first home, or refinance, give our good friend Herb Devine a call at 781-254-2846. You can also shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. He and his team are available anytime, including nights and weekends. John Sapichetti was slated to join us. Hopefully he'll be able to jump on here and join the conversation. I'm hoping that we get him in here in a few minutes. But honestly, John, getting back to the Patriots. Now, look, you know what? And Lauren Gaudette checks in. She says, congrats, John. So there you go.
Thanks, Lauren.
Lauren, longtime follower of New England Football Journal, specifically the Patriots Pulse shows. So she checks in. Look, yesterday wasn't pretty. And I think if we're being realistic with each other, that game could have gone either way. You can make the argument that if Bo Nix plays, they could lose. I mean, there's a good chance they probably lose that game. If the weather doesn't turn, there's a good chance they could lose that game. But between the weather turning, Sean Payton with some idiotic decision-making early in that game, specifically the 4th and 1. Jarrett Stidham playing like a backup in the second half, even before the weather got worse. You factor all of those things in, and it wasn't pretty. And you and I have coached for a long time. Nobody gives a crap about style points. The only thing people care about is winning. But when you factor all of that in, the Patriots were able to do enough, score 10 points. The defense, which has been outstanding throughout the playoffs, once again played at an even higher level. They got it done, and they're advancing to their 12th Super Bowl. And again, when you look at their AFC Championship history, this is probably their ugliest win, but a win is a win, and they're playing for a championship in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, if Bo Nix plays, I think there's a good chance they don't win this game, because the biggest play of the game, John, was the Jarrett Stidham backwards pass. I mean, if he doesn't throw that backwards pass, maybe they don't score any touchdowns in this game. Really, I mean, seriously, that's the only touchdown the Patriots scored was right off that. I'm not trying to take away from the win. I had a blast watching it, but to me, this game was about their defense. And I know Jarrett Stidham's a backup, but if you watch this game, it wasn't just, oh, Jarrett Stidham was overwhelmed. Like, he hit one big play. It was the deep pass to Mims. And honestly, I know Gonzo was in coverage. It looked like he was expecting safety help and didn't get it from Hawkins. I think it was either miscommunications or Hawkins made a bad play there. But essentially, the Patriots defense made 2 bad plays the entire game. And they were that play and then the touchdown pass right after it. Other than that, they were dominant. And the Broncos offensive line, best offensive line in the NFL. And I thought the Patriots defense, especially on running downs, won the battle. And I give them a ton of credit for that. The Patriots defensive tackles were better than the Broncos interior offensive line. And again, that's the best offensive line in the NFL. So I give them so much credit for that. And I thought secondary wise, again, they got beat on those 2 plays. You look at a lot of the rest of this game, there was a handful of guys open. There wasn't a lot there. Like, so again, so I know Stidham's a backup, and I know he played poorly outside of that one drive. And I know the backwards pass was a huge mistake that Bo Nix probably wouldn't make. But again, the other units for the Broncos, I thought, lost the battles to the Patriots. So that was cool to see too. It wasn't just Stidham sucks, so they won. I thought the Patriots defense also went out there and took it in those other battles.
All right, John Sapichetti is joining us out now. John, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
All right, welcome to John, and John, the 3 Johns.
Yeah, I was spending all day figuring out what we were going to do. I mean, we're going to be banging our heads against each other. If you guys want to call me Sap, that's fine.
Just so that we can delineate between John. I agree with you. No, John, you're right. You know what, John? Right. Yeah. No, but we were just talking about yesterday's game, John, and thanks for taking the time to join us. But we were talking about yesterday's game, and Lauren checked in, and I think she makes a good point, John Lyons, which is, I think that probably 50+% of the wins were ugly or close wins for the Patriots this year, but the Patriots had the experience to win that kind of game. And I think this is where the soft schedule crowd took a hit yesterday, because this is a game where this so-called team that had an easy path to the Super Bowl, which, by the way, I love WFAN today. Those guys were melting down. They're dumbfounded by the fact, because they're all Giants, Jets, and Bills honks to varying degrees. They're all dumbfounded by the fact that the Patriots are back in the Super Bowl again. They just can't get over it, especially the Jets and Giants guys. But I think when you look at the big games that this team won this year, helped them yesterday, going to Buffalo and winning, going to Tampa and winning those 2 home playoff games, those big wins, going to Baltimore and winning late in the season, those big wins helped them win this game yesterday. Sure, early on they were jitters. You could see it with May. They especially on offense, they were struggling. But once they settled in, once May got into a routine, he scored that touchdown, he hit that flea flicker to Hollins. Once all of that happens, they got into their comfort zone. And I think ultimately they settled down enough and they got it done in ugly fashion, if you will.
Yeah, John, I would even go back all the way to week 2 when they won down in Miami, which was not the prettiest win in the world. They had that punt return touchdown, followed it up with the kick return touchdown of their own by Antonio Gibson. But that's a place that historically, as we know, really difficult for the Patriots to win. To go down there and win there, and then win in Buffalo, and then win in Baltimore, which has also been a place that's given the Patriots, even when they were good, some problems. They lost there in 2019, almost lost there in 07. Like, that's given them some trouble. So I would agree with you. Like, even though it's ugly, like, I think, and you and I talked about this on the post-game shows, John, like, that win in New Orleans wasn't pretty. That win in Cincinnati wasn't pretty. But so many of those wins this year that we looked at and said, hey, they didn't play their best and they won were games they lost last year or lost the year before. And I think that little piece of resiliency they built this year helped them in this game against Denver. Because to be honest with you guys, Denver was at home, but it felt like the Patriots handled the adverse conditions, especially when the weather got bad, better than the Broncos did. So it's just, again, I feel like that little resiliency piece, we've kind of talked about it all year. Now they're 9-0 on the road. Felt like that really helped them in the second half yesterday.
So yesterday they played the Denver Broncos, who had won 14 of 15 games. The week before they beat the Houston Texans, who had won 10 straight games. I don't know what more people want them to do to earn their stripes to be a Super Bowl team. Is it pretty all of the time? No. Is their offense elite at this point? No. But they've also played 3 of the top 5 defenses in football to get to the Super Bowl. And oh, by the way, they're going up against another team that I would say is a top 5 defense in the Seattle Seahawks. I think they're 6th in yards allowed, but they've allowed the fewest points of any team in football.
Yeah, number 1 in points per game.
Yeah, to your point, Lions, I think that when we look at what the Patriots did yesterday, Mike Vrabel handled the situation. He managed the game better than Sean Payton. Sean Payton should have kicked that field goal in the second quarter, would have put them up 10-0. I don't know if the Patriots could score more than 10 points yesterday because their one touchdown came on a near gift from Jarrett Stidham. Who knows what happens after that? But I think that Vrabel outcoached Payton in that sense, managing what was coming about with that weather. I mean, did the Broncos not know that the weather was going to be that bad? Maybe no one knew it was going to be that bad, but you kind of prepare for that. So they win on the margins. They win on the edges. Complete different than the St. Louis Rams. I mean, the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams are a wildly talented team that lose on the margins, special teams, penalties, mind-blowing calls sometimes, and they're not playing anymore. The Patriots are.
All right, Lauren checks back in. She says, I want to add losing to Buffalo late probably had more lessons learned than some of the wins. Yeah, absolutely. They blew a 24-7 halftime lead. You do get a lot out of losses like that.
And I think that's a good point, and that it showed that, it's just a reminder, because we've talked all year too about how young they are, like especially at key spots. Second year QB, I know he's an MVP candidate, but it's a second year QB, rookie left tackle. Yeah, even Christian Gonzalez, who had the huge interception yesterday, we look at him as this vet. He's a third year guy, and so is Marcus Jones is only a fourth year guy. So a lot of these guys, not only are they younger players, this is their first time in the playoffs. And so I think maybe a loss like that to the Bills with a more veteran team might not do as much, but with a young team like that, I think it can give you some real lessons. And they haven't lost since then. So I think it did help.
When I look at the 2 most impressive games this year, and I've said this to John Sarianides on several occasions, and you might think I'm nuts, John, Lions, but I thought that the loss against Pittsburgh in week 3 showed me that they could play. They had 5 turnovers. They were sloppy. They dominated that game in the second and third quarter against a team that eventually won the AFC North. So that to me was a good mark for them, even though they lost. We remember back in 2001 when they lost to the Rams, and Mike Martz said, we'll probably see them again. And everybody kind of said, what is he talking about? And of course, 8 weeks later, they're playing them in the Super Bowl. The win that really impressed me the most is the Giants win on Monday night, because I seriously thought the Giants were playing decent football at that time. We saw how many times they lost by 3, by 4. They almost went in and beat Denver. Should have beat Denver a few weeks before that. I thought the Giants were going to come in here and beat the Patriots, and the Patriots just curb stomped them. And when they did that, I said, this is a team that knows how to get ready for any type of opponent. And they just continue to do that throughout the rest of the season.
And it's interesting now because when you start to look at the early narratives ahead of Super Bowl 60, it's already starting. The national media is already writing them off. You saw it last night on NFL Network. Michael Robinson, former Seahawk, coming out and saying, well, of course I'm picking the Seahawks. Carr non-committal, but he was leaning Seahawks. You can also, and I even watched this morning when I watched Good Morning Football, you just get the sense that I think nationally people wanted Denver and or the Rams or Seahawks, which if it were the Rams, it would have been a first-time matchup between those two. If it were the Seahawks, it would have been a second-time matchup between those two. But you already get the sense. And I'm not – listen, I've coached football for over 30 years. I don't put a lot of stock in the disrespect card. I don't put a lot of stock in a bulletin board material and all that shit. I know a lot of people do. I don't. But I will say this. Mike Vrabel does. And I think it's already starting. The narrative that, great, that the national nightmare is back now. They were gone for about 5 years, 5 or 6 years. Now they're back. Now we're going to deal with them again. They could potentially be back long-term again, blah, blah, blah. They shouldn't be here. It's more about what the Broncos didn't do than what the Patriots did. Thoughts on the narrative? Do you see what I see, or do you think that I'm being a New Englander and seeing something that may not necessarily be there?
So look, I would look at it this way. I think Seattle is better than them, like talent-wise, depth-wise. However, I think it's extremely close. And I would give the Patriots edge at head coach, although it's close. Mike McDonald's done a great job. And I would give them the edge at quarterback. So the two most important spots, I'd give them the edge. But look, if we're being honest, I think Seattle's receivers are better. Their O-line is probably better. I mean, it's in the same neighborhood. And I think their defense, as good as the Patriots have been, I do think Seattle's better. But those things don't all come together and say Seattle's going to walk to a win here. Like, this is a very winnable game for the Patriots because, again, I think the way they match up to them is a little bit different than other teams. And you look at the way Seattle carved up the Rams, I get it. It's also the third time this year they played them, an in-division team. They know them very well. Not going to be the same with the Patriots. And the Patriots can throw some things at Seattle that I don't know if other teams really like. I think of, and we can get into this a little bit if you guys want, but like I look at Marcus Jones, and I'm not going to be surprised if he's covering Jackson Smith and Jigba because of the similar size, the similar short area quickness. Like everyone chalks it up to say Gonzo's going to cover him like most number one corners would. But like the Patriots have that other option in the slot with that a lot of other teams don't have. And I think that's just one example. But I think there are some matchup things here the Patriots can take advantage of. And also, and I don't know if you guys put stock into this or not, Mike Vrabel went to the Super Bowl 4 times as a player, won 3. Mike McDonald's never been there before, so at least there's something there. And I know Vrabel didn't go as a coach, but then Josh McDaniels, I mean, what's this? Is 8 Super Bowl he's coached in, right? Whatever it is, like there's something to that too. So I think from the national perspective, yes, I think overall Seattle's roster is better, but I think the Patriots are close enough, and at certain spots are better. They can make this game close. Like this is not going to be last year where the Eagles kicked the crap out of the Chiefs for 3 quarters, and then the Chiefs got some garbage time points.
Yeah, I mean, Drake May's been to more Super Bowls than Mike McDonald, and Drake May went when he was 10 years old. So obviously the Patriots have that type of experience with Mike Vrabel and obviously with Josh McDaniels. As you said perfectly, Lions, that they have those two guys that are not going to be surprised by what takes place during Super Bowl week. I think the narrative is going to be about Sam Darnold, right? Because he was part of that famous 2018 draft class where it went Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, then it was Josh Allen, Josh Rosen, and then Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, 2 MVPs. Josh Allen, everyone seems to think is the best quarterback in football, won an MVP. Baker Mayfield has turned his career around in Tampa Bay. And, Sam Darnold was kind of like the runt of the litter, and yet he's the first one out of that group going to the Super Bowl while he's on his 5th team. That is an interesting story, and I think that's what's going to be really fed us for the next couple of weeks. And also the narrative is going to continue that the Patriots didn't play anybody. But if you look at the playoffs, they played a team that won 10 straight games in the divisional round. Their defense outplayed Houston's defense, which most people felt was the best defense in football. Then they go to Denver, which had lost one game since mid-September, and their defense was better than Denver's defense, and everybody thought Denver had a better defense. So they won it in different ways to get to the Super Bowl. It was actually their defense outplaying the opponent's defense more than their offense lighting it up for the Patriots. So they show they have many ways to win. But I think the narrative this whole 2-week period is going to be about Sam Darnold, because here he is, the quarterback in the 2018 draft that you felt least likely was going to win a Super Bowl, and he's one win away from doing it ahead of Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, and I think, and John Sapichetti, you and I have had these conversations. This reinforces what I think of Allen and Jackson, and whether or not they have that winning DNA. Now, you can make the argument Sam Darnold was on a better team than them this year, and that's fine. I don't see it that way. I don't think the Seahawks coming into the season, you wouldn't pick the Seahawks to finish ahead of the Bills in their division or the Ravens in their division. So I think anybody who thinks, well, he's on the better team, that's a load of bullshit. I don't buy it, because I think pound for pound, the Ravens are better than the Seahawks on paper. And I think the Bills, if not better, certainly comparable to the Seahawks. So the idea that somehow Darnold lucked into a better team and that's why he's going, because I've heard that. I've heard a couple people mention that today. I think that's just ridiculous. I question whether or not Allen and Jackson have championship DNA. I've done that from the beginning. Mahomes, we know, has it. He's won 3 Super Bowls. Burrow, TBD. But with those two, I don't know if they have enough championship DNA to get their respective teams to a Super Bowl. Clearly, Sam Darnold does. Scott checks in. He says, hey, guys. He then says, Warriors come out to play. Yes, of course, referencing the 1979 movie, The Warriors, which this whole Warriors thing is awesome to me because I coached at King Philip for years. That was our moniker. That was our thing for a long time. We would put the movie, the font from the movie on our playbook covers and everything else. So it tugs at my football heartstrings. But, hey, again, this speaks to how much of a master motivator Mike Vrabel really is. The fact that they've played up the whole Road Warriors routine and finishing 9-0 on the road, which is an NFL record, and embracing playing on the road. Let's face it, in the NFL, more so than any other sport, it's hard to play on the road and win and consistently win on a year-to-year basis. What they've done on the road this year, and this is yet another reason why the soft schedule stuff needs to stop, because this team has met the challenge at every turn, and they've done it on the road as well, going 9-0. That's really impressive, man. I don't care what anybody says about their schedule and whatnot. That's never been done before. First team to do it.
And Sap, to your point about the 2 most impressive games of the year, like for me, the first one was actually that win in New Orleans. Like, obviously, look, the Buffalo win was huge, but the reason I say that win in New Orleans was so impressive is how many times, guys, have we seen them in the previous 3 years win a game, including in Buffalo or against Buffalo, and then lose the next week or lose the next 2 or 3. For them to keep that focus level the next week, go on the road and beat another team that they should beat, I thought that was, again, that's something that been a while since they've been able to do that. And then the Baltimore game, look, I know the Ravens had a bad year. I know Harbaugh, I don't think he's the coach he used to be. He got fired. But to go there and win a Sunday night game, that's still tough. Like, that is a night game in Baltimore. And you know what? It's still Roquan Smith. It's still Derrick Henry. It's still Lamar Jackson, I know, just for a half. It's still Zay Flowers. Like, that's still a really talented team. They just underachieved. So to win that game, and also, again, that New Orleans game, to follow up the Buffalo game with continued success, and they've parlayed it into 9-0 on the road. And they've won, guys, really every type of game you can think of on the road. Like that Buffalo game, they came down to it, had a game-winning drive at the end. The Jets game, they were up 35-10. Baltimore, they came from behind. Cincinnati, they played bad early and then recovered and held on. Like, any way you want to talk about how to win, they were able to do it on the road. And I think if you look forward to the Super Bowl, it's not a road game, but you're not playing at home. And I think the environment, and I know to some viewers this might sound a little weird, I actually think the environment that they're going to play in Santa Clara is going to be easier than the one they had to play in Denver. It's not going to be that crowd in Denver. It's not going to be that altitude. It's probably not going to be that snow. I'd be surprised. So even though it's the pressure of the Super Bowl and the big game, I think it's going to be an easier physical environment, you will, than the Denver game was.
When you look back at that New Orleans win, New Orleans turned out to be a pain in the butt all season long. They played everybody tough. I mean, Kellen Moore should get some sort of fifth place vote for Coach of the Year because that looked like the worst roster in football. Looked like they were tanking, and he had them at 6-11 and beating like Carolina and Tampa down the stretch. And don't forget the win at Tampa when they played Tampa. Tampa was 6-2, and Baker Mayfield was supposed to be an MVP candidate. So that's who they play. That's who you play. You take care of business, what you have to do, but they cannot take away what they've done in these playoffs. Yes, the Chargers were a train wreck because of their offensive line being a mess, and talk about not maybe having the winning DNA. Justin Herbert just melts during the playoffs. But Houston had a 10-game winning streak when they came in here. And like I said, the Broncos had won 14 out of 15, and the Patriots beat both of them because their defense was that much better than the other teams.
Lauren checks back in. She says, I keep thinking the Road Warriors, a Legion of Doom. Ooh, what a rush, as Hawk used to say. And then she does her best impression of Kevin Stone and throws in a ha ha ha. Stone is notorious for putting ha 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 in texts.
I do that too sometimes.
Yeah. Ha ha ha.
I have no excuse for it. Yeah. And I think though, like get into what Sapp said though. Like, so that win against Houston last week, and I know, look, the Seahawks have a terrific defense. The Broncos have a terrific defense. For my money, I think Houston has the best defense in the NFL. And if you look at the combination of Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, but the way those dudes on the outside can cover to complement that with Stingley and Lassiter, and it wasn't just that the Patriots scored 21 offensive points against them. It's that they had 3 legit drives. Now, I know they didn't take advantage of the turnovers on offense, but 3 legit drives down the field against them for touchdowns. I thought that was incredibly impressive. I think you can make the case, even though they had the turnovers, that Houston win might be their best win of the year, considering the quality of the opponent and the fact that it was the divisional round. Now, if you want to hold the turnovers against them and put another win there, that's fine. But I think the other thing is, like, we talk about the environment in Santa Clara not being as difficult as the one they had in Denver. As great as Seattle's defense is, I don't think it's as good as the one they played in Houston against Houston. So, I mean, that should give them experience. And that's not all to say, like, Seattle's an elite team. They're really, really good and they're well coached. But I think the Patriots have experiences this year that at least have them coming into this game in a good spot where they're not going to be blindsided by how good it's not going to be like the Broncos playing the Seahawks in 2013 and it's a buzzsaw. They're going to go into this with their eyes open.
Lauren checks back in. She says, I'm a basketball coach as well. And we defensive people say defense travels. Every team plays on the same dimension of field, no matter what city it's in. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. This is a football show, goddamn. So we're going to keep it to football, okay? None of that hoop stuff. Although I coach hoop as well. I'm coaching my daughter's 3rd and 4th grade team. So I'm coaching basketball, which means I'm standing there yelling, pointing out the obvious.
They call it Naismith Sarianides.
No, but that's what basketball coaches do. They point out the obvious. Yeah. Rebound, foul. Like, they don't actually coach. It's the one sport where you actually don't need a coach. But thank you for checking in, Lauren. Sapp, you wanted to chime in there?
Keep besmirching one of my favorite sports. I know.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah,
and as I've called you before, Bill Musselman on the sideline, the former Minnesota Timberwolves basketball coach, who was kind of like a football coach on the sideline. No one knows who the hell I'm talking about, but that's
former Minnesota Timberwolves coach. I know who he is.
Yeah, he was back in like 1990 when I was a little bit younger. But as far as when you look at what they've been able to accomplish for all of this is now going to be a bigger challenge because of the offense. We can all agree that the Seattle offense is much better than any offense they've faced in the postseason, right? Because you got Justin Herbert back in front of a really bad offensive line. CJ Stroud, I don't know what's going on with him. He's regressed to being a horrible quarterback. And then, again, without Bo Nix, you're going up against Jarrett Stidham. Denver was not able to really materialize anything on offense. Seattle's offense is for real. Sam Darnold's playing at a high level. Kenneth Walker can run the football. Offensive line is good. And you can make a case that Jackson Smith-Njigba has been the best wide receiver in football this year. He's going to be a handful. So they're going to be a very, very tough challenge. The thing about Seattle's defense, now, over the last 2 months, the Rams have been able to put points on the board against Seattle. They put up 37 in a Thursday night loss. They put up 27 in the NFC Championship game. Other than that, in the other 6 games over the last 2 months, not against the Rams, Seahawks have given up 44 points. That's 7.3 points per game. So their defense has played very well. Like you said, Lions, the Rams are familiar with them, so they were able to put points on the board. And obviously, they have the presumptive MVP in Matthew Stafford and a ton of weapons. So they're going to put points on the board against anyone. This is going to be a challenge for the Patriots offense. And they're going to have to, I think, step up more than they have so far, because I do expect Seattle to put more points on the board than the three opponents that the Patriots have beaten so far have done.
See, I think that this was best case scenario for the Patriots. I think Seattle's a way better matchup for them than the Rams would have been. Because, for one, I think that this Seattle offense, I'm not as bullish on them as you are, because I do think that despite the fact that Darnold played well yesterday, still think he's turnover prone, as is May, but Darnold led the NFL in turnovers from the quarterback position. That's something you got to keep an eye on. No Zach Charbonnet. He's out for the year. The Patriots, one thing we know they will do defensively, they will stop the run. And I like this matchup against that offensive line and Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker is what I call a pinball back. He's a guy that if you don't make first contact and he can hit the hole, he's got those loose hips and those that lateral quickness that he can stick his foot in the ground and pick up another 5 or 6 yards. But he's also the kind of back that loses a lot of yards. So if the Patriots can reset the line of scrimmage and execute effectively in terms of their run fits, they should be able to contain him. And I love this matchup for their secondary because, in John Lyons, you brought this up earlier, and I think it's a valid point. You have options here now with Gonzalez, Jones, Carlton Davis on how you want to handle Smith and Jigba. If it were me, depending on how they line him up, I would be physical with him because he's a smaller receiver. I would reroute him at the line of scrimmage. I would be handsy with him within the first 5, and I would really, really try to take him out of the plan. This is a game, this is a Bill Belichick special where you're going to take away their best guy. I think if you take away Smith and Jigba, I think the rest of this passing game is very pedestrian. I think their tight ends are good, not great. Cooper Kupp is a shell of himself. North Andover's finest, Jake Bobo, only caught 4 passes all season, including that touchdown yesterday. So I don't think they have a lot. So on paper, I think this is a really good matchup for their defense. Now, offensively, I don't think they played well. So this is going to be a tough matchup for them, specifically the offensive line. This pass rush, while it's not as good as Houston or Denver's, it's still a pretty good pass rush. And I think Leonard Williams could be a real problem for them in the middle. That's where I think this game is going to be won and lost. Can this Patriots offense bounce back? Can they score 21-28, which is what I think you're going to need? Probably 28, which is what I think you're going to need to beat the Seattle team. I think that's where this Super Bowl is going to be won and lost. It's going to be the Patriots offense versus Seattle's defense.
It's interesting, John, because you and I, we usually agree and stuff on this show, but I think the Rams would have been a better matchup for them. And I think it's more for me. I just think this Seattle defense, and no disrespect to that Rams defense, but this Seattle one, I think is a lot better. And what worries me, like you brought up Leonard Williams, we've talked a lot this year, and especially those first couple playoff games about Will Campbell and, are they helping him enough outside? Is the help hurting him? How is he? But this to me is going to be a Jared Wilson and Garrett Bradbury game because they're going to have to figure out something and how to contain Leonard Williams, because if not, May's not going to have to worry about pressure off the edge. It's going to be right in his face.
And then to your point, I think the one thing I will say, though, I think the Rams' edge pressure would have been more of a problem with Verse and Josiah Stewart, Everett's own Josiah Stewart, and Kobe Turner. That's the only thing. I think interior-wise, you're right. I think Seattle will pose more problems.
And I think it's interesting, too, in that, like, Devin Witherspoon got picked before Gonzalez in the 23 draft. And I think in the short area, he's a better player, but I think you can hit him over the top. Like, I don't know. I see him. You see him get run by sometimes. And again, it's not all the time, but every now and then you see him get run by and he doesn't flip his hips quick enough. And you wonder, the Patriots are such a great deep passing game this year. Can they hit a couple of those? It's just the issue. And you hit the nail on the head with it. They just have played really poorly on offense for the most part. Again, that Houston game, they had those 3 great drives I mentioned earlier. They had the one great drive, I thought, against the Chargers for the touchdown. They had another good field goal drive against the Chargers as well. Other than that, though, we've seen a lot of struggles, and it's a tough spot to be going into. Maybe the 2 weeks off will help them. I don't know, but if they're going to win this game, I agree with you. I think they're going to have to score 28 points. And we just haven't seen evidence yet that they can do that.
Leonard Williams is one of the players that you fear the most on Seattle. Loved him when he came out of USC. I remember John Sarianides and I were doing draft shows. You could just tell. I called him baby Richard Seymour. That's who he reminded me of, about 6'6", 310, who could just dominate in so many areas. He hasn't been quite the player Richard Seymour, but he's been pretty darn good. Then he goes from the Giants to the Jets, and now he's in Seattle. He's a game wrecker.
He went from the Jets to the Giants.
Jets to the Giants,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
They drafted him, and then, of course, there you go. There's two wonderful teams that don't know what the hell they're doing, and they let this fine player go. Obviously, he had to do with money, but Leonard Williams is a guy that can really make an impact out there.
I think, John, you brought this up earlier about the coaching matchup. The Patriots have a distinct advantage here. And this is not a knock on Mike McDonald. I'm not trying to diminish him in the job he's done. And I'm not trying to diminish Clint Kubiak in the job he's done with that offense, specifically with Sam Darnold. But I think the Patriots have a clear advantage here. And look, we knew this about Vrabel going back to that 2019 playoff game when they ended Tom Brady's career in New England, when the Titans came in here and beat him in that wild card game, Brady's last game as a Patriot. He situationally outcoached Bill Belichick, guy he played for, a guy that you could say influenced him as a player and as a coach. He outcoached him situationally in that game, and I think that's going to be more of an advantage for the Patriots than I think people are going to be willing to talk about here in the next 2 weeks. Because, again, I think the national narrative is going to be, oh, here we go again. I get Mahomes and Kelsey weren't that bad after all. Patriots are back. Bah humbug, moo, right? But then within that, it's going to be that people aren't going to talk about the things they should talk about, which is, again, not only is Vrabel great at communicating with players and a master motivator, but he is arguably the best situational coach in the game. Not arguably. In my opinion, he is. I think he's the best situational coach in the game. That's something to keep an eye on in this game. The Patriots are going to have an inherent advantage there.
I think they're going to need it. And I would even give you a recent example, John. Christian Gonzalez interception yesterday. Denver subbed. Vrabel waited, subbed in late for the Patriots defense. Denver got a little sped up. Stidham had to snap the ball right at the end of the play clock. It didn't look like they were just quite ready. And then he throws an interception. And I'm not telling you it's the only reason he threw the interception.
Things. Yep.
But it's like that was a little thing that made a difference there. And I think, even him taking the points on the field goal when Sean Payton didn't, right? Like little things, like in a game like this against Seattle, where again, I do think top to bottom, Seattle's got more talent than you. So how do you beat a team like that? You got to out scheme them. You got to have the advantage at quarterback, and you got to win those situational moments. And I agree with you. I think the Patriots can win those situational moments. Like what worries me is like Rashid Shaheed. If he gets a few big plays and his speed element gets involved, we saw it in the divisional round against San Francisco.
I didn't mention him earlier, and he is arguably the other guy to Jackson Smith and Jigba. It's not Cup or Bobo.
And to me, it's his speed element. Like that divisional round game was over after he took the opening kickoff back, and then we even saw against the Rams. Yeah, and we even saw against the Rams. All he needs to do is hit 2 or 3 of those big plays where he can get in space and run, and either it's going to put points on the board or it's going to cause the Patriots defense to react, and then everything opens up for Seattle. So that, like that,
and to your point, not to cut you off, one thing you could say about this Patriots secondary this year, they got better at it as the year went on. They give up big plays. They do give up big plays. And they give them up at inopportune times. You saw it yesterday to Mims on the 52-yarder. Beginning of the year was more of a problem than it was the second half of the year, but they are prone, as talented as they are and as good as Woodson and Hawkins have been on the back end and over the top, as you saw yesterday, they are prone to giving up big plays at inopportune times. Shaheed's going to be a key guy in this game, especially if I'm Clint Kubiak and I'm in plus territory. Let's say I'm 45-45. I'm taking that deep shot with him because, especially on first down, I think that's where they could hit the Patriots on one of those.
Shaheed had the biggest play of the. Oh, sorry, John. Shaheed had the biggest play of the season this year for the Seahawks. They were down 16 points midway in the fourth quarter against the Rams. If the Rams win that game, they're going to sail to the NFC West title because they would have had 2 wins over Seattle. He returns a punt for a touchdown. They go for 2, makes it 30-22, ball game on, and then the Seahawks won 38-37 in overtime. If he doesn't give you that punt return, they probably don't win that game because they were asleep at that moment. They weren't moving the ball at all against the Rams defense. And that kind of ignited the team, the crowd, everyone, and they were able to win that game. And that kind of was the impetus for them to being the number one seed and hosting the game yesterday rather than playing it at SoFi. So he's that impactful of players. The Patriots also with Marcus Jones have a player that can flip the field as well. So those are going to be interesting matchups as we await the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and also a guy who had a really bad game yesterday, even when the conditions are good, was Bryce Baringer. And like in the altitude, he couldn't get a good punt off. And I think again, like Rashid Shaheed, he's not like a lot of teams have fast guys or a speed guy. He's a pretty good player that's also really fast. He's not just a fast guy. And I think the reason we make that distinction is I talked about the kickoff return for a touchdown against San Francisco. Sap, you just mentioned the punt return. He also had big plays in space in other games, including in the NFC Championship game. So this is a guy you got to account for because in a game where, maybe it's going to come down to one of those situational moments that Sarianides mentioned. Well, you don't want Rashid Shaheed making that situational play and running by guys and having that key score. So I think he's going to be, a huge looking ahead, a huge factor in this game. Because again, not just a fast guy, pretty good player who's also fast.
Scott checks back in. We have a bunch of comments here that I have to get to. He says, we all coached them, I'm assuming, in this game. He's talking about yesterday with Sean Payton. Yeah. Real quick, before we go to the other comments, I do want to get both of your thoughts on the 4th and 1 call.
From Peyton, I was against it. I was actually with Tony Romo. I would have kicked that. And
so
partly because of and my thing with that is if you have a backup quarterback, you're playing a great defense, just get points on the board. Like, if
play the game, man, you got to know it's going to be that type of nip and tuck game. You got to play the situation. You got to play the game.
This is important. And I think this didn't get talked about because it worked out. I disagreed with Vrabel's tush-push decision on that 4th and 1. The ruling went in the Patriots' favor, and they ended up getting a field goal on that drive. I would have kicked it right then. And if you look at that play, Milton Williams and Drake May were not on the same page because May went to run off tackle, and Williams shoved him inside. So that play was not well coached. And again, I know it worked out, but I even disagreed because for the same reasons I disagreed with Peyton, that type of game, take the points. You don't know when you're going to get them.
I still don't think Drake May made the first down, but it was a good spot.
Yeah,
they were able to get the field goal eventually. It was close. It was that close. As far as Sean Payton, you're up 7-0. You have all the momentum. You're at home. A 2-score lead in that type of game seems insurmountable for the Patriots. Maybe it wouldn't have been, but you know what's coming with the weather. But you also have to feel the game. If you're looking at a 38-35 type game like the Rams and Seahawks yesterday, 31-27. Okay, maybe you go for it on 4th down because you're going to need more than field goals. You knew this was going to be a field goal game no matter what, and they're presented with would have been a 32-yard field goal attempt, puts you up 10-0, and it puts the Patriots behind the 8 ball. I think Sean Payton completely blew that call. And the play he ran also not exactly the easiest thing to try to pull off in that situation.
No, it was a terrible play call. But I think now I'm hoping this sheds some light on the idiotic analytics that have invaded the sport, and we stop with this nonsense. I mean, coaches they're 4th down crazy now in terms of going forward. And look, this isn't baseball. Analytics, they can be a part of baseball. Do they have a place in football? Sure, I'll give you that. But this reliance on analytics and this incessant desire to constantly go for it on 4th down, I'm hoping that this sheds some light on how bad a practice it is, especially in the playoffs where points are at a premium. That decision cost them the game, in my opinion. And that and Stidham's decision to try to throw it away, and then he ends up throwing it into the ground and the Patriots recover it. I mean, those are the two key plays of the game, because if he kicks the field goal there and Stidham eats the ball or airmails it, Denver could have potentially won that game yesterday. Instead, because of those two plays, they lose 10-7. They go home. Patriots advance. Ken Matthias checks in. He says, hey, gents, hope you enjoyed the snow. No one did. You're right, Ken. No one did. Great win by the Pats. Looking ahead, what's the matchup are you guys looking forward to? We went over that already. For me, would be Gonzo matched up with JSN. Yeah, but John, I think Lyons made a good point. I'm not sure that they're going to exclusively marry Gonzo to JSN. I think they will in situations, but something tells me that they're going to play it by ear. Ken checks back in. He says, where is Stone? Stone's coming back from Denver. Of course, he went out there to cover the game. He should be landing in a couple of hours here. I'm sure the people that are on the plane with him can't wait until he lands. That's for sure. If you think he's annoying, just think how those people must feel. And then Ken Matthias kisses up to us by saying, great to have the 3 J's. All right, Ken, relax. I'm kidding. Thanks for checking in, Ken. Appreciate you, man. Thoughts on Stone? Thoughts on Stone on a plane?
That could be a sight to behold. But we're like the old Dallas Mavericks, the 3 J's.
There you go. I like that. Mashburn, Jackson, and Kidd. Yeah, there you go. The 3 J's: Jimmy Jackson, Jason Kidd, and Jamal Mashburn. Nice reference. Back when they had great uniforms. Yeah, Stone on a plane. I don't know how I feel about that. Anyway, but no, I agree with you guys. I mean, look, again, in a game like that, and Peyton talked about it after the game, talking about the importance of we had the momentum. We wanted that 2-touchdown lead. We felt it was important. I understand where he's coming from, especially because you're playing with a backup. But at that point, the Patriots couldn't get out of their own way offensively. They were inept. You take the points, you kick the field goal, you go up 10-0. And look, Jarrett Stidham's Jarrett Stidham. The national narrative all week, and you saw it in the pregame shows yesterday, this isn't your run-of-the-mill backup. He's got an elite defense supporting him. He's got a good skill group, a great offensive line. He hasn't played in 2 years, but he was a number 1 recruit in high school football in 2015. Alex Smith went out of his way. He picked the Broncos to win 27-24. He was his PR guy for 3 hours yesterday. But at the end of the day, Jarrett Stidham was Jarrett Stidham. It's a reason he's a backup.
And to put a bow on the 4th down thing, at the time the Broncos went for 4th down, the Patriots offense had run 12 plays and they had gained 12 yards. You go up 10-0 there again. It's not a guarantee Denver wins, but I think it puts them right on the path to winning. It's something that I think Peyton's going to look back on, and I think he's going to really regret.
Does the national media love Sean Payton or what? I mean, they just absolutely adore him for whatever reason. I think he's an a-hole, or at least he's been to the local media at times. I think he's a phenomenal coach, but is he much better of a coach than Mike McCarthy, Mike Tomlin, and John Harbaugh, who all came into the league together and have exactly the same resumes? All have won 1 Super Bowl, and they've now with Peyton is 1 in 2 places. Mike McCarthy gets hired by Pittsburgh, gets made fun of. He had 3 consecutive 12-win seasons in Dallas, but everyone likes to just make fun of Mike McCarthy because he looks like Fred Flintstone or whatever. But Sean Payton, the national media loves him.
No, but no, and I agree with you on McCarthy. I think that's a better hire than people want to give it credit for in Pittsburgh. I don't know if I'd say the national media loves him, but I do think, to your point, I do think he gets a free pass. Interestingly enough, Kyle Brandt this morning on Good Morning Football was not kind to him in regards to that decision. Mark Schlereth, former Bronco, came out and bashed the decision on Dan Patrick's show this morning. So as much as maybe that's the sense that the national media loves Sean Payton, I'm not sure that's the case. He didn't have a lot of supporters today in regards to that decision.
I think if you're the Broncos, or if you're a Broncos fan, you look at yesterday as one that got away. Again, you kick a field goal there.
They should have won the game.
Stidham doesn't throw a backwards pass. You win the game. Or Leonard Taylor doesn't get his fingertips. We haven't even talked about that. What a play that was. Leonard Taylor doesn't get his fingertips on a field goal, and it's 10-10. It's if you're Denver, I think you're looking at that one and you're saying, man, Vrabel got the best of Sean Payton. We made a couple big mistakes, and we let one get away at home. Like Jarrett Stidham could be starting the Super Bowl instead, again, because of a couple things here and there where the Patriots did a better job in certain situations. They're going to the Super Bowl instead.
Let me just play hypothetical real quick. Let's say Bo Nix doesn't get hurt, whether or not an issue. Did they lose yesterday?
I think the Broncos win.
Yeah, so do I.
And you know what it is, honestly? And I'm not telling you I'm some Bo Nix cheerleader. I just don't think he throws that backwards pass. Honestly, really, that one play, if he just doesn't do that one, and that would make the difference. I mean, the week before,
that's the concern going into the Super Bowl too, right? Because, I mean, they were pretty inept on offense yesterday. Outside, even in the second half, you take away that opening drive of the second half, I mean, yeah, the weather started getting bad, but they couldn't do anything on offense. They couldn't sustain anything. And then, obviously, when the weather got bad in the fourth quarter, neither team could. But The offense is a concern. That's why when I said earlier, can this team get to 28 points? Because I think that's what it's going to take to beat Seattle in the Super Bowl. I'm not sure they can. They haven't shown me anything this postseason to make me believe. And I think that the Drake May hype train needs to stop at the station at some point here, because he's been fine. He hasn't been great. He hasn't been putrid, but I don't think he's been all world either. And my concern going into the Super Bowl is this offense good enough to score the requisite number of points that it's going to take to beat the Seattle team?
I do think if Bo Nix plays, Denver wins, because even on the fourth down call, maybe it's a different play. He's better with his legs than Jarrett Stidham.
Yeah, he puts that down, and he might have gotten the first down running it.
Right. So I think the Patriots were fortunate that it wasn't Bo Nix out there instead of Jarrett Stidham. And now we're hearing reports, and who can believe what? This is what happens for 2 weeks leading up to the Super Bowl. You know, Dr. David Chow, who was Chargers.
That may hurt his shoulder yesterday.
So, look, Dr. David Chow's a lunatic. I get that. But he was the first to report that Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles 2 years ago. And he nailed it with Joe Burrow's injury back in September, saying it was a grade 3 turf toe sprain, and he was going to be out 12 weeks. He's pretty close on that one. So I don't know what happened with Drake May yesterday. I think maybe when you look at the game, is kind of speeding up for him a little bit. He's 23 years old. He had a great year. But down the stretch, he was not the same quarterback as he was for about an 8 to 10 game stretch, where every week it was like a 110 passer rating, and he wasn't turning the ball over. Down the stretch, with the exception of that game against the Jets, he struggled a little bit.
Yeah, and I think, look, if you're going to win the Super Bowl, you're going to, because again, I know I keep repeating myself, but I think Seattle top to bottom is more talented than you. You're going to need May to play like an MVP, and he hasn't played like an MVP the past few weeks. Now, it's been good enough to win, but like, if we're just being honest, okay, and I'm the guy I got my Patriots sweatshirt on, but if we're being honest,
I got my Boston Patriots hat on.
Yeah,
so there you go.
If we're being honest, in the Chargers game, he had the interception I don't put on him in the Chargers game. That was a tip ball, but he didn't have good pocket presence, and the O-line didn't play well in front of him, but he didn't feel the pressure well. He had that big run late in the first half. He had a really great pass to Hunter Henry, but he was kind of inconsistent. The Houston game, they had the 3 great drives, but other than that, outside of those 3 drives, didn't play well. And then in this game on Sunday, he had the 28-yard run on the Patriots field goal drive. There was the 31-yard pass to Mac Hollins, the flea flicker, Other than that, he didn't play well. And so now it's just 3 weeks of him. And it's not just, okay, they've been playing great defenses. I know that. I give him some slack, but he's not feeling the rush as well as he was earlier in the season. Guys also aren't getting open as well as they were earlier in the season, and he's not quite seeing it as quickly. He's a little, I think you said it, Sap, a little sped up at this point. Like, maybe the 2 weeks will help and just kind of help him reset a little bit, because they are going to need him to play a lot better in this Super Bowl than he's played in these 3 playoff games.
And these 3 playoff games were played in inclement weather. And maybe he's just not that guy, or he has to learn how to play better in inclement weather. I mean, Tom Brady, the first time we saw him in the snow, was lights out against the Raiders. Right away, you could say, okay, this guy's, well, obviously the greatest quarterback of all time, but he kind of ate up playing in that situation. Aaron Rodgers, great in inclement weather. Maybe Drake May is just not that guy. So when you get to the Super Bowl, you're going to be playing in Northern California. Hope it's 55, 60 degrees without precipitation, and maybe that will help him going forward. I also think, too, when you look at that, I would like to see if they could get the screen game going at some point. But as you've told me, Sarianides, that's not as easy to do as like a layman like me would think, because I think that that's an area that you can really maybe get these aggressive defenses to bite and hurt them.
Yeah. Sap, I've been wanting the screen game to get going since October. I've been talking to Sarianides about this.
I've heard you. Yeah. Yep.
And I just think too, and John, you might be able to speak to this. Like, it's, yes, their screen game should be better than it is, but it's one of those things. It takes just so much practice and repetition among new offensive linemen.
As I said before, some screen teams are better than others.
And some are better, and even
of your team.
And even the McDaniel screen teams that were good, you remember, Brady had been in it multiple years. Kevin Falk had been in it multiple years. James White had been in it. All these guys had been in it multiple, even when they go wide receiver screens and it was Troy Brown or Edelman or Welker. Those guys had been in it for a while before they got really good. I mean, it's not easy to just walk in and be good at screens right away. But to Sap's point, can you hit 2 decent screens in the game against Seattle, that could make I'm not asking for a bunch. If you hit 2, might make a big difference.
Well, especially with Travion Henderson, because he was so good in the screen game at Ohio State.
Yeah.
And it's not from a lack of effort per se, but I don't feel that they've capitalized on what he can do as a receiver. I thought he had a terrific year for them on the ground, but as a receiver, motioning him out, sending him out and lining him up in the slot, having him leave, having him come back home into the backfield, or just flat out lining him out outside and getting either a safety or a linebacker on him and empty. They haven't done enough of those things. He could be an even more dynamic piece for them if they used him more like that. I think in this game, they're going to have to, because the one thing with the Seattle defense is they will play a lot of base and they will play a lot of nickel, but they want to play as much base as possible, and they want to be able to they believe that their outside linebackers and safeties, especially somebody like Nick Inmawari, he can match up with slots and splits. So you're going to see them in a lot of base looks. Patriots have to capitalize on that by using a guy like Henderson as a chess piece. If they do, they'll be able to get some big plays out of him. Scott says, love your take, John. I'm assuming he's talking about me, right? I mean, no.
I'll assume he's talking about me. So, works.
Well, you're Jon, though. I mean, he did say John.
That's true.
Yeah. So Lauren checks back in. She says, I did a bit of research. Pat scored 28 points or more 11 times this season. In those games, the record was 10-1. There you go. So 28 points.
Only loss was that Bills game at home.
Yeah. And 28 points to an offensive coordinator is the magic number. That's your goal number as an OC. At minimum, you want to average 28 points a game. Ideally, you're in the 30s. But can they get to 28 against this defense? Yeah. We shall see. Situationally, Scott says, Lauren checks back in. She says, I think that people and pundits have forgotten that Vrabel may be the first-year coach in New England, but also a successful coach in Tennessee. I wonder if Vrabel I wonder if Vrabel had more snow coaching experience over Peyton. I don't know.
Peyton wasn't a dome all those years, so I just think Peyton's sheer number of years he probably would have. But if you add in Vrabel's playing experience, I don't know, maybe it's an interesting, because Peyton wasn't a dome all those years.
And Peyton, his first year with the Saints, they got to the NFC Championship Game against the Bears. Lost in Chicago. It was not a real pretty day, as it never is in Chicago in January, and they got kind of lit up in the second half and blown out. So, playing in a dome is a lot easier to deal with than playing what those guys were playing with yesterday.
Scott says, I agree, John. He also says he used the clock masterfully in the second half, which we all agree. Ken Matthias checks back in. Does Seattle's offense have enough outside of Walker and Kupp and JSN to compete with McDaniels and the Pats offense? Well, I think with those three guys, yes. I think they have plenty when you look at those guys. That's a good skill group. I agree. The question is, can they get more out of those secondary guys?
And I think, too, and we've talked about this a little bit, like last year, Sam Darnold went into the last week of the regular season with a dominant team ready to try to go for the number 1 seed, and he played really poorly on a big stage and then followed it up with a bad playoff loss as well. So I know he's been great this year, and I think if we're being fair, he's better than people give him credit for, but can you get in his head? Can you get to him in a big game like this? I mean, it's his first Super Bowl. We talk about the inexperience of the Patriots. It's Sam Darnold's first Super Bowl too. Can you get him into a mistake or two? Like, that could be an equalizer as well. I mean, Seattle's got all this talent on offense, but if you force a couple turnovers there, then it tips the scales in your favor. And again, Darnold's had a great year, and he had a great NFC Championship game. I'm not taking that away from him. It's just a guy who, first Super Bowl. In big games in the past prior to this year, he had some struggles. Can you manifest something like that?
Pretty amazing. He's 30-7 the last 2 years. That's outstanding. With 2 different teams. He leaves Minnesota. They go from 14-3 to 9-8. Seattle didn't even make the playoffs last year, 10-7. He goes there. They're 14-3. Now I'm going to go in the way back machine. Let's go back to 2019. I believe it was a Monday night game when he was playing with the Jets. Seeing ghosts. Seeing ghosts out there.
And that night, by the way, I was in Worcester watching the band Ghost perform live.
Perfect.
So there you go. Little tidbit that
Patriots won that game 33-0, and it wasn't even that close. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I remember that.
Darnold was seeing Ghosts, and I was watching Ghost perform.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I was probably
And then
eating a
Kyle
meal
Van Noy
somewhere.
had T-shirts made. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, yeah.
But my point being with that is, if this defense is somewhat similar to Belichick's defense, can some aspects of that be used in the Super Bowl, or is Darnold now a better quarterback that he can handle that
Yeah,
stuff?
and I think too, one thing, and I want to get Sarianides your thoughts on this, is the Patriots defense has really ramped up the pressure over the past month, especially in the playoffs. They've been blitzing a ton. They've been doing a bunch of stunts, all this, and they did some of it earlier in the year, but they've really, really ramped it up in the playoffs. With the skill players of Seattle, do you keep doing that? Because it's got like it's one thing against Houston and no Nico Collins. It's a different thing when it's JSN and Rashid Shaheed and Walker. Like, are they going to afford, as good as the Pats secondary is, to keep? Because I think if you can get a lot of pressure on Darnold, maybe what Sapp's saying, you can kind of get some of that. But it's just, to me, it's riskier to do that against Seattle than the previous three teams they've played in the postseason.
Yeah, I agree. But you know what? It's what got you here, and I would keep it going if I'm Zach Kerr. Now, do I sell out as much? Do I bring as many 6 and 7 man pressures as they have brought at various points in these playoffs? Probably not. I think the focal point of my blitz package for this game is probably 5 and 6 man pressures. Obviously, I'm going to blitz peel the outside guys. But yeah, to your point, I think, look, if the Patriots have played a lot of man this year, probably 70% man coverage. I'm not sure you can do that in this game. I think you're going to have to play more combination coverages. You may have to play more matchup zone coverages. But I do think that it's what got you here in the playoffs. Zach Kerr has done a tremendous job. This defensive staff has done a tremendous job designing these pressure packages. And by the way, this defense in its origins is what they were doing in the first part of the dynasty. If you go back to that defense, it was a primarily a 3-4 defense. But think about how it evolved after that, before Crennel left, where they did more nickel stuff, more 40 stuff, more mug and bluff stuff. You started to see more of that. Then they
That's
go
why
to
they
Houston.
drafted Asante Samuel.
Yes. Then
originally, and then he moved outside. But yeah.
Yes. Then they go to Houston, and Crennel really ramps up the pressure. They start to play more man coverage. Remember, Belichick, for the majority of his career until he came here, was a zone coverage guy.
Yeah.
And it's Nick Saban, when they coached together in Cleveland, it's Saban that really started to turn him on to man coverage, because Saban is a big man, matchup man guy. And the Patriots started playing a lot more man in the mid-2000s into the 2010s. And then when you go into the second part of the dynasty with Patricia, Flores, when you look at that defense, they played more man than zone. And I think this defense has aspects of that defense and what they did in Houston with Crennel. And that's what you're seeing here. A lot of TE stunts, a lot of movement up front, stemming, moving around. I said this how many times last offseason? The days of them two-gapping are over now. It's not about controlling gaps. It's about taking gaps, and that's what they've done all year. And I get the sense that that's still going to be their MO in the Super Bowl. They're going to come after him, and I would too, because as good as he's been and as talented as that skill group is on the perimeter, I still think in certain situations you got to light him up.
As you talked about Sarianides, go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
No, they're going to need one of their individual guys to have a big night. And maybe it's your adopted son, Caleb Von Chason, or maybe it's Landry. I don't know, but they're going to need, because their D tackles, I think, have been fantastic in the playoffs. They have not gotten enough pure edge pressure. They've had to blitz a lot to get edge pressure. They're going to need, whether it's Jennings or Landry or Chason, they're going to need one of those guys to have a great individual night on top of any of the other pressures they do. Again, because I think the Seattle line's good enough, and with 2 weeks to prepare, I don't think you're just going to be able to blitz the bag out of them. I think you are going to need a guy to have a good individual night on top of any pressure package stuff you do.
I'm going to ask my two football guys this. At some situations, can you kick Barmore out a little bit? Because I know he's played some out there this season, not a ton, but is that
I don't think he gives you anything against them.
Yeah, it's because I remember in the old days, like they would do that with Will Fork once in a while. They put him out on a tackle and mess around, and he was he was bigger than Barmore, but almost equally as athletic. Like he was just a freak. That's why he might go to the Hall of Fame. But like with Barmore, I don't know if I think he's at his best if you put him in the A gap or B gap and you just say go upfield. and just go straight, go off the guard's outside shoulder and just get upfield. Something like that. So I'm not saying no. I would be surprised if they did something like that.
I'd put him on Gray. He will be predominantly on Gray Zabel's side, the rookie left guard. But I would give Gray Zabel a steady dose of Christian Barmore. 6'5", he's longer than Woolfolk was. I think he's a twitchier player than Woolfolk. And to your question, John Sapichetti, you can play him at the 5 tech, and I think you can get something out of him. But this is going to be the kind of game where if you're not going to bring as much pressure, I don't want to put that body out there. I want Chason, Landry, Ponder. I want those guys coming off the edge. The other thing that the Patriots haven't done a ton of is bring slot nickel pressure from the boundary. I want to see that. I want to see them bring. I want to see them bring that boundary pressure. And I don't think they also use their safeties enough in the pressure game. Perhaps this is a week that they do it in this game. But to your question, John, I think he can give you more inside, especially to Gray Zabel's side. Ken Matthias says, is Stone covering the Super Bowl in Santa Clara? Ken, I'm not sure Stone knows where Santa Clara is. The other thing is, I'm convinced Stone thinks that the Santa Clara was one of Columbus's ships when he came over here. So I'm not sure that
the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Clara. Yeah, it's got a ring to it. Yeah,
it does. The plan is to cover it in person, Ken, but we don't know right now if we're actually going to be out there or not. TBD. Lauren checks back in. She says, on the other side, Seattle only had 2 games where they gave up 28-plus points. Their record in those games was 1-1. And then Ken checks back in. Will the Patriots play more zone or man-to-man against Seattle? Ken's always a step behind with the questions. We've addressed that, Ken, but we think they're gonna blend more. And to John Lyons' point, this could be a game where they play more zone because of Shaheed, because of that vertical threat, and of course JSN. JSN might be the best receiver in the game right now. I think he's the best.
I wonder if you'd play some sort of combo coverage where you play zone, but you have someone man up on JSN at the line. Like, he's just so good. It's tough. Like, I prefer man coverage in general, and I think the Patriots have the man corners to do it. But again, with the speed element the Seahawks have, I don't think you can do that for 70 snaps. You're going to have to mix it up. I just don't like JSN getting any sort of free release at the line. Even if you're in zone, find a way to make sure that doesn't happen.
Let me tell you something. In times like these, you play cover 5. 2-man. 2-man. 2-man's a bitch.
Yeah.
As an offensive coordinator, for years, I hated going up against 2-man. It sucks.
Yeah. Or one robber, Seattle, I think would be interesting against them, but yeah.
But the other thing is, to your point, I think in certain situations, depending on alignment down and distance, you're going to have to bracket or banjo him depending on where they line him up. But I think the other thing here is Seattle does do a lot with compressed formations, so I think that could negate 2-man a little bit. You're going to have to play off even though you're in man coverage underneath. But I think cover 5 could be the answer here, where if you're that worried about JSN, especially down the middle of the field, well, now you can be physical with him at the line of scrimmage. If you reroute him and you keep him outside the middle of the field into the hash or out, now that's safe. You do have safety help over the top. I think that they could potentially play a lot of cover 5 in this game. We'll see. Lauren checks back in. She says, are the Patriots staying 2 high safeties, or did they bring one down in the box to play a rat or robber technique? I could see them doing that, but I mean, again, why play a cover 1 robber in this situation? Like, I'm not sure I see the point in it. I think if you're
like that coverage a lot in general, but I think, John, like you explained it pretty well. I don't know for this matchup, given JSN's speed, Shaheed's speed, and Cooper Kupp is really, really good too at just finding holes in zones. Maybe he's not the guy he was a few years ago, but he's so smart too that I wonder if just making sure you don't get beat over the top is your priority. And especially if they're going to find ways to bring pressure. I don't want 1 high safety if you're going to play pressure on top of it too. It's tough. They're really Zach Core, who's had a really good last month and a half, and he's come a long way. I think he's got his work cut out for him in this one. It's going to be tough.
The thing that makes JSN so impressive is I don't know if there's a better route runner or smoother route runner than JSN. he's certainly one of the 5 best receivers in football. Probably had the best year of any receiver in football, but he just looks like an impossible guy to cover. And Lyons, you talked about it. Maybe it's Marcus Jones with some help. I mean, is Carlton Davis anyone that could probably help with that, or is he just not going to be fleet enough to stay with JSN?
I'm just curious what they do in that. Like, again, Gonzalez is one of the best corners in the league.
Yeah.
His length, though, it's just a different matchup. Like, if it was Jamar Chase,
he's your classic boundary corner, and you don't have that big receiver to deal with in this matchup.
Exactly. Like, I mean, if this was Cortland Sutton last week, or if this was Nico Collins had played, if Nico Collins had played against Houston, it's just JSN's a different body type. That's why I wonder if it'll be Jones or Davis. And I just think Jones. Davis is bigger than Jones, but Jones has better short area quickness. I think there's
my only concern with Jones, though, John, is Seattle's going to watch. They're both going to watch every single game they played this season, and Seattle's going to see what everybody else has seen throughout the season with Marcus Jones. If you get him, especially in the red zone, you get him in the slot. Now you have that slot fade. Now you have that slot fade. Now you have that corner route. Yes. Yep. That's where JSN scares me on that slot fade or that corner route. That's where he could be a problem. So that's
maybe it's Davis then.
Yeah. Maybe it is, because again, I think you got to get handsy with these guys, especially him and Shaheed. You can't give them free releases. You can't let them win at the line, stack and separate. If they do, you're cooked. It's over. Okay. You're chasing the back of a jersey now if you're a Patriots defensive back. So I think it's really important that they're physical at the line, take advantage of those first 5 yards, reroute them, throw them off their route, reset their stem, and make them have to separate and try to get open, which in essence would force Donald to hold the ball longer. So I think playing it physically is going to be the key. Now, if I'm Clint Kubiak, conversely, knowing that, and he has to think that the Patriots are going to play a bunch of man and they're going to be physical, you have to think that there's going to be a lot of compressed formations, short motion, trying to find ways, rubs, trying to find ways to get guys open and create separation. Because, again, I think that's going to force the Patriots to have to play off. And when that happens, now you get the space you need to operate, which matters with guys like JSN and Shaheed because they're quick twitch, smaller guys that could separate on route breaks. So we'll see. And all of a sudden now we're getting an X's and O's here. I'm getting all lathered up. Ken Matthias checks in. If you guys have time, check out my interview with Sapichetti. Great to talk to him. All right. Ken's peddling his products here now. It's getting late now. I did check it out. Good job on the show. John, as always, did a great job on the show. I think the premise of the show was how the media industry is tough to break into. Is that fair, John?
Part of it, yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Ken, again for checking in. Yeah. Lauren Gaudette says, you guys mentioned the Belichick. I like how you spelled Belichick. Special. Double number one, best corner number two, but I agree with the speed aspect. You can't practice that well sometimes. Yeah, because you don't have guys. Kyle Williams will probably be JSN at practice.
But then again, should he be Shaheed? Like from a speed element, you know what I mean? Like that's how fast Shaheed is.
Yeah, maybe
like if I'm thinking of
give you that look.
Yeah. Maybe, like because the two fastest guys in the Patriots are probably Marcus Jones and Kyle Williams. So it's like
Kyle Williams will be Shaheed, and
I don't know. It's an interesting. It's kind of like we talked about. John, if you remember when we were getting ready for that Baltimore game, like it's one thing to game plan for Lamar Jackson. It's one thing to watch film and get ready and practice against scout team. It's another when you see that dude in person. And I feel like JSN is a guy like that. I think Shaheed's speed, that single characteristic, is like that too. Like, I'm not going to be shocked, guys, if at some point in the first or second quarter, they do give up a big play to one of those guys, maybe for a score or a huge gain. I just wonder, will that big play be a one-time thing or indicative of something that Seattle figured out on them? And obviously, we'll just have to watch and find out. But I'm not going to be surprised if they give up one big one. Can they contain it to just giving up one big one, or does Seattle figure something out?
One aspect of yesterday that I found impressive is the officials let the players play. I think in the second half, they quite frankly couldn't see what was going on. So how do you throw flags when you don't know what's going on? But Patrick Surtain maybe the best corner in football, was very handsy yesterday, and they let him get away with that. We'll see in the Super Bowl if the Patriots are going to be physical or those Seattle wide receivers, if they'll get away with it.
Yeah. No, it'll be interesting. Well, I think they've already announced who the white hat. Isn't it Smith? Is it Sean
Oh, I don't
Smith?
know. I didn't see it.
Yeah. I think he's a white hat. All right, wrapping up here. We got about a minute left. We got another comment that came in. It's Lauren Gaudette. She says, "Hey, Sap, I'll have to check out your episode so I can get into the media. I love listening to all you guys talk weekly." Well, Lauren, thank you very much. Appreciate you checking in. All right, gentlemen, final thoughts here before we wrap it up.
And final thought, I'll just go back to kind of the original, because we got 13 days to the Super Bowl here. Like, we're talking about a team that won 16 games in a 3-year span, and they won their 17th game yesterday to win the AFC this year. I mean, I think it's the most improbable run in team history. It's one of the most improbable in NFL history. And it's just, I want, like, again, we all want to win the Super Bowl. I get it. But I think it's worth taking a step back to appreciate how far they've come and where they're at, and enjoy where they are and what they have ahead of them. Because again, goals to win the Super Bowl here, I know, and I'll be disappointed if they don't. But just given where they've been the last few years to where they are, it's just, if you told me this in August, I don't know if I would have believed it.
13 days away from the matchup. I don't feel good about the matchup, but I am apt to change as I continue to research. And Lions, Sarianides can tell you this. I'm the most analytical person you'll ever meet. I'm not necessarily analytics in sports, but just how I kind of think through different processes. So maybe by game time, I'll be picking the Patriots. I do have a real suspicion that Drake May is going to have a coming out party on Super Bowl Sunday. He has struggled in the postseason. I think it could be partly weather, whatever the case may be. We're not going to be facing that in 2 weeks at the Super Bowl. I think Drake May could be sitting on a big game.
I like this matchup for the Patriots. I said that yesterday, and I'm going to echo that sentiment. I just think, again, when you look at that Seattle offense, I do think the Patriots match up. I think that offensively, yes, Seattle is better than the Rams defensively, but again, I do think that they have matchups there that they can exploit as well. We'll see, but we have 13 days to dissect it, break it down. A lot could change between now and then. And hey, if David Chow is right, maybe there is something going on with Drake. Hopefully there isn't. All right. Well, John, I want to say thank you, gentlemen, for taking the time and joining me tonight. I know that you had big shoes to fill with Kevin Stone. I think he's a size 8. So I think you guys filled them admirably. Thank you for taking the time.
No problem. I'm a size 9, so we're good.
I'm 10.5.
I'm a size 15. So
yeah, I can believe that.
There you go. So, all right, gentlemen, thanks a lot. Great job as always. That'll do it for this week's episode of the New England Football Show. For John Lyons, John Sapichetti, I'm John Sarianides. We'll see you next week. Until then.